Today we're going to be thinking about one of the most amazing passages in the Bible. It's one of my favourite verses. But before we get to that, I just want to show you this. When I was little, I used to think this was really amazing. I wonder whether you can see what it is. If I just pull this, you might get a better idea. It's one of those clever tape measures that you can pull out, and when it's like that, it stays, and then you press the button and it whizzes back in. I used to think these were really cool, and there must be something fun about these, because my boys, when they were little, used to think this was pretty amazing too. They're great fun, aren't they, for measuring things? Now, I think it would be quite fun to measure that oak tree behind me, but this tape measure is only 1.5 meters long, so I'm going to need a bigger one. So I've borrowed this one. This is 8 meters long, so I'm hoping this is going to be big enough. So just bear with me. First of all, I'm going to measure how wide it is. So just stay there and I'll be back in a second when I've measured how wide it is. Hang on a sec. Well, it would seem it's about 7.7 meters long, 770 centimeters. Just need to wind that back up. So that's how wide it is. Now I need to measure how long it is in the other direction. So bear with me and I'll be back in a second. That's a bit trickier. Our oak tree goes over the stream. So unless I'm going to get very wet, I can't work out how long it is. But I'm going to guess it's about 8 meters as well, because basically it's round. But now I need to measure how high it is. So bear with me. It's really tall, but now I need to measure how deep it is as well, how deep its roots go, so that might take me a minute. Hang on a sec. Well, I can see some of the roots sticking out at the bottom of the bank of the stream, but I can't get low enough down, far enough down to measure how deep the roots are. So really all I know now is it's about 8 meters wide, 8 meters long, very tall, and probably got very deep roots. Well, why have I done that? Well, it's to hopefully help us to understand a little bit more about our Bible passage today. Paul has been telling us that he wanted to share the mystery of God with his friends who were new Christians in Ephesus. He wanted to help reveal to them the truth of who Jesus was and how much Jesus loved them. And today he prays for them, and his prayer is that they would really understand just how enormous Jesus' love is. He wants that prayer to be true for all Christians. So it's as if he's praying it for me, and it's as if I can use it as a prayer for you, that you too will understand something of the enormity of Jesus' love. But how do we measure a feeling? How can we measure love? I can't use a tape measure to measure love. It just doesn't work like that. Well, Paul uses 4 words to describe Jesus' love for us. He says that Jesus' love is very wide, really wide. In fact, it's so wide that Jesus' love is available to everybody. Nobody needs to get left out of Jesus' love. And he says that Jesus' love is very long. Well, what does he mean by that? He means that he has been loving right back at the beginning of time, since the first person was made. Jesus loved them. And he says that love will carry on throughout eternity. Jesus' love won't just last me for my lifetime here on earth, but it will last me into heaven and into eternity as well. And he says that Jesus' love is high. So he's saying that when we are celebrating wonderful, happy, joyful high points in our life, Jesus is there with us celebrating them as well. And you know, that height will continue until the very highest of heights that we can get to when we join Jesus in heaven. But he also says that Jesus' love is deep. It's a deep love that goes right down to the depths when we need it to. So when we're feeling sad, or when we've done something really bad and we're feeling really rubbish about life, Paul says that Jesus' love is right down in the depths with us. It's like Jesus is at the bottom of the hole, holding our hand when things are tough. So Jesus' love is wide, it's long, it's high, and it's deep. But it's hard, isn't it, for us to understand that fully? How can we really comprehend how big Jesus' love is? Well, Paul gives us two helpful answers to that. Firstly, he says we can't. We can't understand. It's so enormous, it's impossible to understand how big Jesus' love is. And secondly, he says that we can understand more of it if we work together to understand it. So it might be that your mum can help you to understand how wide Jesus' love is, because she's had some sort of understanding of that in her own faith. Or it might be that your dad can help you to understand some of the realities of how high Jesus' love is. Or your grandparents or an elderly person that you know might be able to help you to understand how faithfully God has loved them throughout the entirety of their life. Or maybe when you see some of your friends going through bad things and you hold their hand and go with them through that, you'll see how God is faithful in loving them through that, and you can learn something of the depth of Jesus' love too. So we can't possibly hope to understand all the enormity of Jesus' love. But if we share our experiences together, then piece by piece we can build up a better picture of how Jesus loves us. Now, if I'd had even just one of my boys to help me with the tape measure earlier, I'd have got a more accurate idea of how big that oak tree is. If I'd got somebody who was really skilled at climbing trees, maybe a tree surgeon, to go right to the top, I would know better how tall it was. And if I'd maybe got somebody who understands how oak trees grow and can estimate how big their roots are, I would understand more about how deep the oak tree is. And it's like that with Jesus' love. If we work together, we can understand more of it. So as we think about that this week, we need to think, how big is God in our minds? How big is Jesus' love for us? Are we making God too small? Or do we really understand the enormity of what Jesus can do in our lives because of how much he really loves us?